First contact and devastation. The skies above Chicago darkened at precisely 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Dr. Maya Chen was in the middle of a quantum entanglement experiment when her lab's emergency lights flashed red. The massive windows of the University of Chicago's Advanced Physics Building offered a perfect view of what happened next. A colossal vessel, shaped like a perfect obsidian sphere, materialized above the city's skyline. "What the hell is that?" her research assistant whispered, pressing his face against the glass. Maya's first thought wasn't scientific curiosity, it was fear. Pure, instinctual fear that crawled up her spine. The sphere's surface rippled like disturbed water, reflecting sunlight and patterns that hurt to look at. "Get away from the windows," she ordered, grabbing her laptop and backup drives. Now. 23 seconds later, the first beam struck. There was no sound at first, just a pillar of impossible light connecting the alien ship to Michigan Avenue. Everything it touched simply ceased to exist. Buildings, streets, people all transformed into fine ash that rose into the darkening sky. The shockwave hit the university moments later, shattering every window on campus. Maya and her team were already in the basement, racing toward the emergency bunker installed during the Cold War. They made it inside just as the second beam cut through the physics building above them. Similar scenes played out across Earth. London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sydney, Rio de Janeiro. Major cities worldwide experience simultaneous attacks. The alien vessels, later named Obsidians by survivors, appeared without warning above 27 population centers. No demands, no communication attempts, no declaration of war, just methodical, clinical destruction. In the Pentagon's underground command center, General Eliza Warren watched helplessly as satellite feeds showed the devastation unfolding globally. "Casualties?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Preliminary estimates suggest 37 million in the first hour, ma'am," replied her aide, face ashen. "Communications are down in most attacked regions." And our response: "The President has authorized everything we have. ICBMs launched 4 minutes ago. Fighter squadrons worldwide are engaging." But he hesitated. Conventional weapons aren't penetrating their shields. On screens around the room, they watched as missiles detonated harmlessly against invisible barriers surrounding the alien ships. Fighter jets disintegrated mid-flight, swatted away like insects. "There's something happening in Chicago," a communications officer called out. "We're getting footage from a civilian drone." The main screen switched to a shaky video feed showing the aftermath of the initial attack. The Chicago skyline was partially erased, with entire blocks reduced to smoking craters. But what caught everyone's attention was happening at ground level. A group of civilians had taken cover behind the rubble of a fallen building. Among them, a woman in a lab coat was frantically working with what looked like modified scientific equipment. The drone zoomed in, revealing Dr. Maya Chen connecting a quantum particle accelerator to what appeared to be a modified satellite dish. The image quality was poor, but they could see her lips moving, giving instructions to those around her. "Who is that?" General Warren demanded. "Facial recognition," says Dr. Maya Chen, quantum physicist from University of Chicago. An analyst reported. "Specializes in particle entanglement and quantum field disruption." On screen, Maya finished her adjustments and aimed the device at the hovering obsidian. She activated it, sending a narrow beam of blue-white energy upward. Unlike the military's missiles, this beam didn't stop at the shield perimeter. It passed through, striking the vessel's surface. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, a portion of the obsidian's perfect surface began to distort. Ripples spread across it like a stone dropped in a pond. The ship's attack beam flickered and died. "What did she do?" General Warren whispered, leaning forward. Before anyone could answer, the alien vessel shuddered visibly. A fissure appeared along its equator, leaking brilliant white light. The obsidian's surface collapsed inward, imploding with a flash so bright it temporarily overloaded the drone's camera. When the image cleared, the ship was gone. In its place was a cloud of glittering debris raining down over the ruined city. Similar reports began coming in from Mumbai and Sydney. Local scientists, using whatever equipment they could salvage, had managed to replicate quantum disturbance fields that somehow bypassed the alien shields. 3 obsidians destroyed. It wasn't a victory, but it was the first sign that humanity could fight back. 72 hours after the initial attack, Dr. Maya Chen arrived at the hastily established Scientific Response Center in what remained of No-Raid's Cheyenne Mountain. The resistance rises. 6 months after the initial attack, Earth was barely recognizable. Half the planet's population was gone. Most major cities lay in ruins. The climate had changed, with dust clouds from destroyed urban centers creating a perpetual twilight across much of the northern hemisphere. But humanity had not perished. Instead, it had gone underground. The Global Defense Initiative formed from the remnants of Earth's governments, militaries, and scientific communities. Its headquarters spread through a vast network of subterranean facilities beneath the Rocky Mountains, deep enough to evade the obsidian sensors, which still occasionally swept the planet's surface. Dr. Maya Chen stood in the central command chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the status of bases worldwide. Her once immaculate lab coat was now a battle-worn garment covered in pockets filled with tools and instruments. A small scar ran across her left cheek, a memento from a close encounter with an obsidian patrol 3 months ago. The Brisbane facility is online, announced Colonel Tariq Nazari, GDI's military coordinator. That's the 27th manufacturing center completed ahead of schedule. Maya nodded, studying the Australian site's production metrics. How many quantum disruptors can they produce weekly? 200 units at minimum capacity. Once fully operational, close to 500. It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough to face the collective when they inevitably returned. But it was progress. What about the recovery teams? Maya asked, switching to a different display. Team 7 retrieved another propulsion core from the Santiago crash site, Tariq reported. Teams 3 and 9 are still extracting components from the obsidian in the South China Sea. Estimated completion time is 48 hours if they don't encounter resistance. Resistance was the euphemism they used for the automated defense systems still functioning in some downed alien vessels. They had lost good people learning that the obsidians remained dangerous even when destroyed. Maya moved to the largest display, showing a 3-dimensional representation of what they'd come to call the Sentinel, humanity's first reverse-engineered alien spacecraft. It was small compared to an obsidian, roughly the size of a pre-war nuclear submarine, but its capabilities far exceeded anything humans had built before the invasion. Dr. Okuffer says the quantum drive is stable, Tariq noted, following her gaze. They completed the 5th test run yesterday. 10 minutes at full power with no fluctuations. 10 minutes of operation for a drive that could potentially cross the solar system in hours. 6 months ago, such technology would have seemed miraculous. Now, it was barely adequate. We need more, Maya said firmly. The collective isn't going to give us years to prepare. From what we've decoded of their communications, their main fleet is already mobilizing. The intercepted alien transmissions were frustratingly incomplete, but they painted a clear picture. The collective had sent what amounted to a scouting force to Earth. The destruction of so many obsidians had been noted as an anomaly requiring correction. Their response would be overwhelming. Maya turned as the command center's doors slid open. Dr. Hiroshi Yamamoto entered, accompanied by a tall man Maya didn't recognize. Hiroshi had been one of Japan's leading neuroscientists before the attacks. Now he headed GDI's Neural Interface Division. Dr. Chen, Hiroshi called, excitement evident in his voice. We've had a breakthrough. This is Captain James Reyes, our first successful neural pilot. The tall man nodded respectfully. His right temple bore a small metallic implant that caught the light as he moved. You completed the interface? Maya asked, unable to hide her surprise. Last she'd heard, the neural link technology was still causing severe brain damage in test subjects. Not exactly, Hiroshi admitted. We stopped trying to make humans compatible with collective technology. Instead, we built an adaptive layer that translates between their system and our neurology. Captain Rice spoke up, his voice resonant but slightly mechanical. It allows me to control their systems without becoming part of their network. I can fly an obsidian without losing my individuality. The implications were enormous. The collective's greatest strength was their hive mind, their ability to operate as a perfectly coordinated unit. It was also their greatest vulnerability, as Maya had discovered during the Chicago attack. If humans could control alien technology while maintaining individual thought, they might exploit that vulnerability on a massive scale. How many pilots can you equip? Maya asked. With current resources, perhaps 50 within a month, Hiroshi answered. The procedure is still complex, but we're streamlining it daily. 50 pilots against what could be thousands of obsidians in the main collective fleet. The odds were still overwhelming, but better than they had been yesterday. There's more, Hiroshi added. Show her, Captain. Reyes closed his eyes. The neural implant at his temple pulsed with soft blue light. On the nearest display screen, complex equations began appearing, calculations resolving themselves without keyboard input. The neural link allows direct communication with our computer systems, Hiroshi explained. Captain Rice is performing targeting computations at roughly 100 times the speed of our best tactical AIs. How is that possible? Maya whispered, watching as the equations continued to flow. The collective's neural technology doesn't just allow communication, it enhances cognitive processing. It's how they coordinate so perfectly in battle. We've managed to isolate that enhancement without the hive mind component. A human with the processing speed of a supercomputer, a pilot who could control alien technology while thinking independently. For the first time in months, Maya felt genuine hope stir within her. Get me more pilots, she ordered. As many as you can safely convert. And Hiroshi, I want this technology adapted for other applications. Weapons systems, defense grids, communications, everything. Already in progress, Hiroshi assured her. We're calling it the Prometheus Protocol, stealing fire from the gods to save humanity. The following weeks saw the GDI transform from a desperate survival operation into something resembling a coordinated war machine. Prometheus-enhanced humans, dubbed Prometheans, became the core of the resistance. Their accelerated cognitive abilities allowed for quantum leaps in reverse engineering alien technology. These breakthroughs didn't come without cost. Some neural recipients couldn't handle the cognitive enhancement, their minds burning out under the strain. Others developed disturbing symptoms, hearing voices, experiencing memories that weren't their own. Maya suspected these were fragments of the collective consciousness bleeding through the interface. But there was no time for caution or second thoughts. Satellite systems, painstakingly rebuilt after the initial attacks, detected energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. The main collective fleet was arriving. In what remained of the International Space Station, now heavily modified with alien technology and hidden in Earth's orbit, Maya stood before the leadership of the Global Defense Initiative. The observation deck offered a clear view of their homeworld below, its once blue surface now marred by vast gray patches where cities had stood. The Prometheus Protocol has given us an edge, she concluded her presentation. But it won't be enough for a direct confrontation. We need to think asymmetrically. You want to use guerrilla tactics against a spacefaring hive mind. General Kwame Nkosi, formerly of the South African Defense Force, sounded skeptical. Exactly, Maya confirmed. The collective operates as a single entity. They excel at coordinated, overwhelming force. But they struggle with unpredictability, with chaos. She brought up a simulation showing the collective's attack pattern from the first invasion. See how perfect their formation is, how synchronized their movements. That's their strength, but also their vulnerability. They can't improvise effectively. When faced with unexpected scenarios, they hesitate while the hive mind reaches consensus. Maya's plan was audacious. Instead of preparing for defensive action against the incoming fleet, the GDI would strike first. Small, fast attack craft piloted by Prometheans would target the outer ships of the collective formation, using hit-and-run tactics to disrupt their carefully coordinated advance. "We can't match their firepower," she acknowledged. "But we can confuse them, frustrate them, force them to adapt to multiple threats simultaneously, something their shared consciousness struggles with." The strategy was approved with minimal debate. Earth had nothing to lose. Operation Firestorm launched 3 days later. 32 attack craft, each utilizing reverse-engineered obsidian technology, but deliberately designed to look crude and unfinished, deployed from hidden bases around the globe. Their mission: intercept the collective fleet near Saturn's orbit and wreak havoc. In the GDI command center, Maya watched the operation unfold through the tactical network. Captain Rice, leading the attack squadron, provided real-time updates through his neural link. Main collective fleet sighted. His thoughts appeared as text on the main display. Count is massive. Several hundred capital ships, at least 1,000 smaller vessels. Formation is exactly, as Dr. Chen predicted, perfect geometric pattern. The human craft approached from multiple vectors, targeting isolated obsidians at the formation's edges. The attack pattern was deliberately chaotic, each pilot acting independently rather than as a coordinated unit. "They're not responding," Rise reported with surprise. "We've destroyed 3 outer vessels, and the main formation hasn't altered course. It's like they don't consider us a threat. Or they can't agree on how to respond." Maya suggested, "Keep pushing. Target their communication nodes specifically." The skirmish escalated. Human vessels darted between the massive obsidians, firing quantum disruptors before disappearing again. More alien ships began to fall, their perfect formation gradually dissolving as they attempted to track the erratic movements of their attackers. "Something's happening," Rise reported after 20 minutes of continuous assault. "The collective vessels are arguing." "Arguing? How can you tell?" General Mkosi demanded. "I can hear them through the neural interface. Not words exactly, but intentions. Different directions pulling against each other. Some want to pursue us. Others want to continue toward Earth. Others want to regroup. They can't reach consensus." Maya exchanged glances with Hiroshi. This was unexpected. The neural enhancement was allowing Prometheans to eavesdrop on collective communications. It was a tactical advantage they hadn't anticipated. "Can all your pilots hear this?" Maya asked. "Affirmative. We're coordinating our attacks to target the most confused sections of their fleet." For 6 hours, the battle continued. Human losses were minimal. 3 vessels destroyed, 5 pilots confirmed dead. Collective losses were substantial. 27 obsidians destroyed, dozens more damaged severely enough to fall out of formation. But the most valuable outcome wasn't the physical damage inflicted. It was the psychological impact. For the first time in their existence, the collective had encountered an enemy they couldn't predict or overwhelm with synchronized force. An enemy that seemed to anticipate their responses before they could execute them. When the human squadron finally withdrew, the collective didn't pursue. Their once perfect formation had devolved into a disorganized cluster. Several obsidians appeared to be moving independently of the main group, something never before observed in collective behavior. In the GDI command center, the atmosphere was cautiously celebratory. They had bloodied the enemy's nose, but the real battle was still to come. "We've bought time," Maya told the assembled leadership, "but they'll adapt. The question is whether they can adapt faster than we can." Captain Rice, returned from the mission and still connected to the tactical network, spoke up. "There's something else you should know, Dr. Chen. When we engaged with them, I felt fragments breaking off, pieces of their consciousness separating from the whole." "What does that mean?" General Nkosi asked. Maya considered this new information carefully. It means the Prometheus Protocol isn't just allowing us to control their technology or hear their thoughts. It's disrupting their hive mind itself. She turned to Hiroshi, excitement building. We need to amplify this effect. If we can fragment the collective consciousness, turn one enemy into many individual enemies, we might not have to defeat their entire fleet. We might just need to make them forget they're a we at all. Hiroshi finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. As the collective fleet regrouped near Jupiter's orbit, humanity prepared for the next phase of resistance. The war was far from over, but for the first time, there was a path to victory that didn't require matching the enemy's overwhelming force. In labs around the world, scientists worked to enhance the Prometheus Protocol, focusing on its disruptive effect on the collective consciousness. On the moon's far side, hidden from alien sensors, the first human colony took shape, insurance against Earth's possible loss, and in orbiting shipyards, constructed from the hulls of destroyed obsidians, a new generation of warships grew. Humanity wouldn't just survive this war. It would emerge transformed. Taking the fight to space, 1 year after the initial attack, humanity had become unrecognizable, not just in its devastated homeworld, but in its technological capabilities and military doctrine. The term quantum leap had once been a metaphor. Now it was a literal description of how human ships moved through space. On the bridge of the HSS Defiance, the first true human warship built with reverse-engineered collective technology, Commander Sofia Rodriguez watched Jupiter's swirling storms through the observation viewport. The gas giant's massive presence helped mask their ships from long-range collective sensors, providing the perfect staging area for what would come next. "Status report," she requested, turning from the view to face her bridge crew. "All systems nominal," Commander reported Lieutenant Kato, the ship's operations officer. Like everyone on the bridge, he wore a neural interface, a more refined version than the early prototypes, elegant and nearly invisible behind his right ear. Quantum drive at 94% efficiency, weapons systems fully charged. And the fleet. The Vengeance, Retribution, and Phoenix are in formation. Support vessels are maintaining position at the designated coordinates. Marshal Chen is requesting your presence in the Strategic Command Center. Rodriguez nodded. "You have the bridge, Lieutenant." The corridors of the Defiance reflected its hybrid nature. Human design aesthetics merged with alien technology. Surfaces that appeared to be standard metal would occasionally ripple with subtle energy patterns. Lighting adjusted automatically to mimic Earth's natural day-night cycle, a small comfort for a crew who might not see home for months. In the Strategic Command Center, Dr. Maya Chen, now holding the rank of Marshal in the Global Defense Initiative, stood before a three-dimensional holographic display of the solar system. The rank had been largely ceremonial at first, an acknowledgement of her crucial role in humanity's survival. But over time, Maya had embraced the military aspects of her position with the same precision she had once applied to quantum physics. "Commander Rodriguez," Maya greeted without looking up from the display. "Your ship performed admirably in the Ganymede exercises." "Thank you, Marshal. The crew is ready for actual combat." Maya nodded, finally turning to face her. "They'll get their chance soon enough. The collective fleet has settled into orbit around Mars. Our intelligence suggests they're establishing a forward base on Phobos." The holographic display zoomed in, showing the Martian system. Hundreds of obsidians clustered around the red planet, with particularly heavy concentration near its smaller moon. "They've adapted their tactics since Operation Firestorm," Maya continued. "Notice the formation, no longer a perfect geometric pattern. They've introduced deliberate randomness to their positioning." Rodriguez studied the display with a frown. "They're learning from us." "Yes, but not quickly enough." Maya manipulated the hologram, highlighting specific obsidians. "These vessels maintain a consistent distance from each other, regardless of the overall formation. We believe they're command ships, nodes where the collective consciousness is strongest." "Prime targets," Rodriguez concluded. "Exactly. But hitting them won't be easy. They've also improved their defensive systems, incorporating quantum fluctuation patterns similar to our own stealth technology. For the next hour, they reviewed the battle plan. Operation Sundering would be humanity's first major offensive against the Collective. Not just harassment raids like Firestorm, but a coordinated attack aimed at pushing the aliens out of Mars' orbit entirely. The strategy relied heavily on the latest development in the Prometheus protocol. Neural chaining. Multiple Promethean-enhanced humans could now link their consciousness temporarily, creating a small-scale network that mimicked the Collective's hive mind but preserved individual autonomy. Your battle group will consist of 4 linked Prometheans, Maya explained. This gives you the Collective's coordination advantages without their vulnerability to disruption. And when we get close enough to their command ships? Rodriguez asked. Maya's expression turned grim. That's when we deploy the Fracture Pulse. The Fracture Pulse was the GDI's most closely guarded secret, a weapon designed not to destroy obsidians, but to shatter the consciousness binding them together. In theory, it would convert the Collective from a single entity into thousands of confused, isolated individuals. The first deployment of the Fracture Pulse was scheduled for 600 hours Earth Standard Time. As the Defiance and its battle group prepared to depart Jupiter orbit, Maya returned to her private quarters for what might be her last opportunity to rest before the battle. Her room was Spartan: a bed, a desk, a small viewport showing the stars. On the desk sat the only personal item she had salvaged from her old life, a photograph of her research team at the University of Chicago, taken just days before the invasion. All of them were gone now, casualties of the first attack. Maya picked up the photo, studying the faces of colleagues who had become friends, then family. "We're still here," she whispered to them. "We're still fighting." A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, a priority communication from Earth. She activated the secure channel to find General Nkosi's face appearing on her view screen. "Marshal Chen," he began without preamble, "we've detected unusual activity at the Lunar Observation Post. The Collective is deploying something new." The display split to show imagery from the Moon. A single obsidian, smaller than the standard vessels, but with a distinctive pulsing aura, had taken position in lunar orbit. "Our sensors can't get a clear reading," Nkosi continued, "but energy signatures suggest it's some kind of amplifier or relay. They're adapting to counter neural disruption," Maya realized aloud. This changes the calculus for Operation Sundering. After a brief consultation with GDI leadership, the decision was made. Operation Sundering would proceed as planned, but with a secondary mission to investigate and neutralize the new Collective device at the Moon. The HSS Phoenix, commanded by Captain James Reyes, now sporting a more advanced neural implant and commanding the GDI's fastest ship, was redirected to lunar orbit. The rest of the battle group would continue toward Mars as scheduled. At 600 hours, Commander Rodriguez gave the order. The Defiance and its companion ships engaged their quantum drives, disappearing from Jupiter orbit in flashes of blue-white light. The journey to Mars, a distance that would have taken months for pre-invasion spacecraft, was covered in 17 minutes. They emerged directly into the heart of the Collective fleet, weapons already charged and targeting systems locked on the identified command ships. "All vessels, execute attack pattern Omega," Rodriguez ordered through the neural chain linking her to the other ship commanders. The command transmitted instantly, accompanied by tactical data and targeting coordinates that would have taken minutes to communicate verbally. The human ships moved as one, yet each followed a slightly different vector, a controlled chaos that the Collective struggled to predict and counter. Quantum disruptors fired, their energy beams passing through the improved alien shields thanks to constant frequency modulation. 3 Obsidian command ships shuddered and imploded in the opening salvo. The surrounding vessels reacted sluggishly, as if confused by the sudden loss of guidance. "Fracture Pulse armed and ready," reported Lieutenant Kato. "Target the central command cluster and fire," Rodriguez ordered. The Defiance's main weapon, a massive apparatus that occupied nearly a third of the ship's interior, powered up with a rising hum that vibrated through the hull. When it fired, there was no visible beam, no explosion, nothing that human senses could detect. But through their neural interfaces, every Promethean felt it. A silent scream that rippled across space, targeting the quantum frequencies used by the collective consciousness. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Obsidians that had been moving in loose coordination suddenly scattered in all directions. Some fired weapons randomly, hitting their own vessels. Others went completely dark, drifting powerless. A few accelerated at dangerous speeds, crashing into neighboring ships or burning up in Mars' atmosphere. "It's working," Rodriguez whispered, watching the chaos unfold. "They're fragmenting." But the victory was short-lived. From the far side of Mars, a new group of obsidians appeared, these moving with perfect coordination despite the fracture pulse. "How are they still coordinated?" Lieutenant Cato demanded, fingers flying over his console. "The pulse should have disrupted all collective consciousness in the system." The answer came from the Phoenix, engaged in its own battle near Earth's moon. "Marshal Chen," Captain Rice reporting, came the neural transmission. "We've identified the lunar device. It's not an amplifier. It's a backup system, a secondary network for their consciousness." Maya received the transmission in the Defiance's auxiliary command center, where she'd been monitoring Operation Sundering. They created redundancy, she realized. A separate consciousness network immune to our disruption frequencies. "We're engaging now," Rice continued. "But be advised, they've adapted more thoroughly than we anticipated. The backup network appears to be using quantum frequencies that shift randomly on a microsecond timescale." Near Mars, the battle intensified. The unaffected Obsidians moved to protect their disoriented counterparts, forming a defensive perimeter while the damaged vessels retreated toward Phobos. "Recalibrate the fracture pulse," Maya ordered. "Use the full-spectrum approach we tested last month." "That's still experimental," warned the weapons officer. "We don't know if the emitters can handle that kind of load." "We don't have a choice. Do it." As the Defiance's engineering team worked to reconfigure their primary weapon, the battle around them grew increasingly desperate. Human ships, though advanced beyond anything Earth had possessed a year ago, were still outnumbered 20-1. Without the advantage of neural disruption, they were forced to rely on conventional tactics against a superior force. 3 support vessels were destroyed in quick succession. The Vengeance lost its propulsion system.